MG Rob back with you, and today we're going to see if we can get the original throttle mechanism working with the SU carburetor on the Jeep and get a choke cable hooked up. Let's go. Okay, so we're working on continuing the carburetor installation on the Jeep. It's time to actually hook up cables and try to make the throttle actually work. So what I ended up doing was, this is usually the link bar that hooks two carburetors together, and I thought I'd just use that. What I did was I cut off the end and added an extra long piece here to give me plenty of length to play with the amount of stroke it needs to operate. And what I've got here is I made this bracket so that this would trap this bolt in place, so I wouldn't need to hold a wrench on there. And then with this end bracket here, what I actually did was took an 8mm socket, just happened to slide over the end of that really nicely and give it plenty, make it without too much slop. And then I ground it down and cut off the end of it. And with the hole in the end here, I can go ahead and put a little drop of oil in there once in a while to lubricate it, rather than trying to go through the process of finding some sort of a bearing to put in there, because it's not like this thing is going to get tons of miles put on it or anything. And I don't know how long it's going to be on there anyway, so what the heck. This should work. So with this on here, once I come up with a new piece of rod to go from here to there, I can look at how much stroke this takes here and how much stroke it takes here, up the length of it here until I find the right spot. Then I can drill a hole there for the rod and then cut off the excess. And the other thing I did was I made up a new needle for the carburetor. Since the first one I made up was a little bit too rich, I took too much off, I measured this one and made a new needle that wasn't quite so thin to see what we can make happen. Now, of course, I won't know exactly until I go drive it, get load on it, to find out if I'm rich enough, but I'm going to start a little on the lean side maybe, and then enriching as necessary to get it to go under a load. And the other thing I did was I got a new choke cable here. Rather than cutting up any of the old stuff on it, what I did was I just took a MG Midget choke cable, and there was an empty hole here that was big enough to put it in. Went ahead and put it in there rather than having to drill out the original hole any larger, because I don't want to make any modifications to this thing that can't just be unbolted in the future. And the nice thing about these carburetors is they were also made to put on other applications, to where this little piece here was always cast in for the choke, so we can just run the choke cable right through here, and all I got to do is just put the throttle stop here with or a cable stop here to clamp it to it, and then we have our choke working. And these springs that were already here will work perfectly for hooking to the choke and to the throttle. So, works for me. So alright, I got this all figured out now. I found a piece of 1/4-inch rod sitting on the workbench here, but since these were only 3/16 going through here and I didn't have any 3/16 rod laying around, I actually found some long wood screws that were 3/16, and I took the shank part of the wood screw out, welded them onto the ends, and drilled holes through them to make my pins. Go ahead and work the throttle. So there, it should work fine. And then on this side here, go ahead and pull the choke. So everything ought to work just fine here. Of course, the real test is when we fire it up and start trying to run it. Alright, so we got it, fuel line hooked up to it now. So now we're going to try to start it and make sure the throttle and everything works like it's supposed to. Go ahead and start it. So there we go. Looks like the SU carburetor is going to work just fine on it. With the new jet, it sounds a lot better. Or the new needle, sorry. Of course, I'll have to drive it around a little bit and then maybe tweak the needle yet some before it's good to go. But now I should actually be able to start it and drive it because I have throttle control and I can use the choke now. Alright, so I had this one single little ram air horn sitting on the shelf here that I went ahead and stuck on there and hooked to the original hose that, well, not the original hose, but the hose that was on it. So now I'm running through the air cleaner. I don't know if it'll stay like that, or I may in the future come up with something that's a little bit nicer than that. We'll see. At any rate, at the moment, I don't know if the fuel pump, what's going on with the fuel pump. It is pushing fuel and enough fuel, but it just takes so long for it to start pushing fuel like it's got no prime. So I'm currently just still running it on the lawnmower gas can. But I think I'm gonna shut the hood, strap it down, and go take it for a little ride up and down the driveway, see how it feels. I know that looks a little janky, but it's YouTube. We can't do everything 100% correctly on here, can we? All right, well, let's see what happens. So far, it's the best this thing's run since I've had it. If I could just get the gas can at a height where it continues to give gas and I can still drive it. Guess I just ain't quite got it high enough. Alright, so got the gas tank repositioned a little bit and see if it's enough to keep going back to the shop. Like I said, this is the best this thing's run since I've owned it. It does seem to be just a touch lean at idle, so just a light bit of messing around with the needle and I'll be pretty good. Alright, so now we know that an old Army Jeep can run really well on an SU carburetor. Winning! So, I don't know what our next project is going to be on the Jeep, but I do need to take a good look at the brakes here sometime, and there's more things beyond that. But for now, if you like what I'm doing, like, subscribe, share with your friends. It's MG Rob. Later.